Welcome back to another edition of the Dirty Verdict podcast. I don't know that I'm doing the intros well. We really need Peter back.
I mean, I thought you did it well. You just screamed it.
Well, what you lack in talent, I make 4 up in volume.
I'm one of your hosts, Bill Ogden. Full-time litigator, Bill Ogden.
Full-time litigator, Kyle Herbert. Peter might join us later, but we have literally the guests. If you would have told me I could get this guest on my podcast and no other, I still would have gone forward with this over a year ago. That's how excited I am.
That doesn't hurt my feelings at all, considering I was a guest before a host.
Representative Andrew Gray from the great state of Alaska.
All the way from Alaska.
Welcome to the Dirty Verdict podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Andrew, or should I call you Andrew or Representative Gray?
Representative
You can
Gray.
call me Andrew.
Okay.
Don't be disrespectful.
So, Andrew, before we pretend like we're too familiar, how do I know you?
So my younger brother had a best friend in 4th grade in Miss Guerra's class.
That kid was hit by a car.
Westwood Elementary and Friendswood High School.
Yes.
Yeah, Friendswood. And anyway, my younger brother's best friend was Kyle Herbert. He basically lived in my house.
True.
As
Vagabond.
an extra brother.
I was like a shiftless homeless man at the age of like 11 or 12, and I just moved into their house.
He would. He'd come over for like eight sleepovers in a row in the middle of the summer.
Yeah. Well, I think I just lived there during the summer.
Basically.
Yeah. And so we're both from Friendswood. Bill's from Deer Park, just down the road. Nobody knows where Peter's from.
The Deer Park.
Tell us, how did you get, we're starting off with your background. How did you get from little old Friendswood, Texas, all the way to the State House in Alaska?
I drove.
You drove?
I did.
It's like a week.
Graduated from University of Texas at Austin, and packed up my dad's Ford Probe. It was the car that I drove to Anchorage, Alaska, in 1998. So drove a Ford Probe up. Made an adventure of it. So I took way longer.
Yeah, I think you have to.
Well, I mean, there are people who do crazy stuff and just drive straight through. I mean, but to put it in perspective, you're at the halfway mark when you get to Seattle.
Right. So I was gonna say it's like 5 days once you get to Canada.
It's a really long way. But anyway, that's when I moved to Alaska the first time.
So you graduated from UT. What'd you study?
English and music.
And then you decided, did you have a job? Or were you just like, no, going for fun?
I showed up in Alaska in July 1998.
You had to do it during the summer.
On like a Wednesday night. I had no place to live, no job, no friends, didn't know anybody.
And that's when you met Sarah Palin for the first time.
I did not meet Sarah Palin for the first time, but I did meet people that first night, and I'm still friends with them today. And those folks were like, oh my God, you have no plan. We got to help this guy out. So, and I found everything was fine. Everything fell into place.
Back to the music studies. What did you play an instrument, or you sing?
I was in band in high school, but I was a singer.
We have so much more to.
It's a huge story.
He's going to sing for us.
So I left Alaska, and after I worked at a bookstore. That's why this is so boring. Let's move to more interesting stuff. I worked at a bookstore. It was super boring. I left Alaska, moved to LA, taught high school, moved to the Czech Republic to teach English as a second language. Ended up in Estonia, and that's where I auditioned. I accidentally auditioned for a full-time professional choir, sang in Estonia for 3 years, and that was...
Was it like the Estonian National Men's Choir?
Estonian National Men's Choir. Those guys, some of them are like 70 years old. Their entire lives, from like age 20 to age 70, their full-time job was going to choir rehearsal.
Let's just back up a second, because you said that this was going to be boring, and you've told us in the first 5 minutes that you left with no plan, went to Alaska, went full Dangerous Minds in LA high school teaching. Then you went to the Czech Republic, which is the second time I've heard the Czech Republic in the last couple of days. And then you ended up in the Estonian men's national choir.
Yeah. So
I was about to guess that.
I was like 26 years old.
Speak Estonian?
I had to, because the Estonian National Men's Choir, when they hired me, said that I wasn't allowed to speak English. So it was like enforced immersion.
What did you speak Estonian beforehand?
No.
You just faked it till you made it?
I faked it till I made it, and it came in handy, because this year, this will get us to the State House. This year, on the House floor, on Estonia's 106th birthday from 1918, when they got their independence from the Russian Empire, I gave a speech on the floor. It happened to be a couple of days after Alexei Navalny had been assassinated. And so I gave a speech in memory of Alexei Navalny, also wishing Estonia a happy birthday, and I asked permission from the speaker to please say a few words to the Estonian people in Estonian, and I did it, and that went viral in Estonia, which was the goal.
Would you, if you would like to take a second here and speak some Estonian, we'd love to go viral with you.
Tervist Eesti. Minu nimi on Andrew Gray ja minu eesti keel on väga halb.
It's the language of love. It's the language of love.
Vabandage. I'm basically just apologizing for how bad my Estonian is, but I haven't lived there in a long time.
So you speak Estonian, even broken? That's impressive to me.
What's going to be more impressive is when he sings the theme song from Dangerous Minds by Coolio.
In Estonian.
In
the Czech Republic.
With Michelle Pfeiffer.
Hey.
What song is that?
Dangerous.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Gangster's Paradise. Coolio.
I watched Coolio perform that song one Christmas, and maybe the most surreal experience of my life, but I'll leave that for another time.
Yeah, because I don't want to know why you were hanging out with Coolio at Christmas.
Well, everybody celebrates Christmas, even Coolio, you insensitive bastard.
But why were you at that celebration?
Oh, because Coolio invited me. So, moving along, what did you do after Estonia?
Right. Well, so after Estonia...
What kind of questions are we asking on
After Estonia, I moved to DC. I ended up becoming a yoga teacher. I was trying... It's like such a... So I'm gonna jump ahead. I'm gonna move us along. I became a yoga teacher, and then I went to PA school at Baylor College of Medicine back in Houston. So I moved back to Houston, went to PA school because I felt like I needed a career. It wasn't going to work out as a singer. Didn't really see myself teaching private yoga lessons forever.
There's only so many former Soviet bloc countries that have a national men's choir.
That's true. You require yoga.
Right. So went to PA school, physician assistant.
And you're a PA as well?
I am. And then in order to pay my student loans off,
it gets crazy.
I want to get
it gets much crazier.
So in order to pay my student loans off, I joined the military. I was 39. Is like that's like after the age of 30, you're not going to really be able to. It's going to be hard.
I didn't know you could enlist at 30.
You can get an age. Most people get an age waiver if they're under the age of 40. So I joined the National Guard to pay off my student loans.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Were you in the shit?
I deployed to Kosovo.
You were?
Oh, wow.
I did.
Shit.
But I think I would hardly say that I was in the shit. It was.
They weren't.
Did you see blood?
I mean, no.
They weren't friendly.
So I would say that there's high tension there all the time, but there's no one shooting. So longest story in the world longer, I took a job at the Alaska VA. Because I was looking.
So hold on. What did you do in Kosovo? Were you a doctor?
Yeah, I was a PA. I was the medical provider I covered 3 bases. I covered Bonsteel's like the main base, the main American base, but I was based in Pristina, which is like the capital of Kosovo. And then we also had another.
Don't patronize us.
On the Serbian side of the border. On the Serbian side of the border, so further north. And that was pretty interesting because the soldiers that were stationed on the Serbian side, they basically took the Serbian talking points. Like I would do a day a week up on that, and all the guys would be like, the Serbians have gotten a really raw deal here. Whereas all of us who were actually living in the Kosovo part were like, well, what are you talking about? Like, Kosovo's its own country. It's not part of Serbia. We were hearing the other side, and
you don't need to explain the late 90s politics of Serbia and Kosovo.
But can I tell you when this was happening?
2019
to 2020 was when I was deployed to Kosovo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So little known fact, we're still there.
Thanks, Bill Clinton.
Where's Mostar?
I don't know.
Different country, maybe.
It's not. Yeah, it's not him. I bet it's not going to go so.
Anyway, so I was in Alaska. Brought my husband and son were with me in Alaska, and I ran for office in 2022.
Wait, so you went from Kosovo to the Alaskan VA?
I was already at the Alaska VA. I had moved to Alaska.
Stationed, or you were out then? Okay.
No, so I was in the National Guard always, and which means that I have control over where I live. So I was working in an emergency department, a couple of emergency departments in California, and I wanted to get a job at the VA because the VA gives you military time off. You get paid military days. And obviously the VA, the emergency departments I was working with didn't. So it's kind of like I felt like it was like free money on the table. I needed to be working for a VA.
Sure.
So I applied to VAs in California. I applied to VAs in Alaska. Alaska gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. And I wanted to go back anyway.
So is where in Alaska?
Anchorage.
Nice.
So I'd asked you previously how to Alaska, and you said you drove.
Yes.
The question I really wanted to know is
why?
Why?
So I have a friend, Kyle knows her well, Brandy Voss. Her mother's side of her family is from Alaska. And so I'd been sort of intrigued because my friend's family was from Alaska. I read Into the Wild. I was in college.
The best sound, that soundtrack to the movie is my second favorite album of all.
Yeah. And so I was just really intrigued with getting as far away from Texas as possible. And Alaska was just happened to be in my zeitgeist when I graduated from college.
And probably the furthest way you could get. Maybe
without a passport.
Maybe
I didn't realize how easy it was going to be to move out of the country. That happened later. But and pretty much from the moment I arrived in Alaska, I knew that like this was where I was supposed to be. Like I really do feel like an Alaskan inside.
I mean, you once you are elected by the Alaskanites to represent Alaskanonians, then you're in.
It's very similar. I've heard you guys talk about Texas and how you need to be from Texas and how
it's the thing.
Yeah, and so I think it's very similar in Alaska. When people say things, well, do you ever aspire to higher office? And I'm like, well, I have a huge handicap. I was not born in Alaska, and that's going to be held against me.
Do you, by any chance, have a giant tattoo of Alaska on your back?
I do.
Really?
How big is it?
Let's see.
It goes from my right shoulder blade, my whole left shoulder blade, all the way around to the front. It's an octopus in the shape of Alaska. The Aleutian chain comes around to here. Juneau's over here.
So I want you guys to know.
By the way, and I got that in the barracks in Kosovo.
Yeah. Like that dude.
Texan in Kosovo getting a tattoo of an octopus-shaped Alaska.
Yeah. So
didn't have that on my bingo card today.
A couple of years ago, I was having a few folks over for Easter, literally like hunting eggs with kids, hanging out in the living room. This was like 2-3 years ago. And Representative Gray shows up kind of out of the blue. There's a little bit of a party going on. And Andrew walks in and I go, hey, man, how have you been? And he goes, great. You want to see my Alaska tattoo? And then he takes his shirt off.
I wouldn't even need a reason. I would just do it. Walmart. Oh, excuse me, sir. Oh, we can check this out first. And then I'd get out of their way to let him pass me.
All right. So I'm going to put the punchline at the beginning. You were the first openly gay member of the Alaskan House of Representatives.
Or Senate, the legislature.
Of any member of the legislature.
First openly gay man elected to office in...
Any office?
Were there any women?
No. Well, so that's a good question. So to be clear, 3 of us were elected at the same time. I am the first openly gay man. There were 2 women. They're both, well, one is pansexual and the other is bisexual.
What is pan? I know this sounds ignorant and I should know, but I get them mixed up and I'm genuinely...
I can answer that because we've had lots of conversations about it.
Yes.
She's attracted to people, not genders.
Oh, okay.
She had dated women before, but she's married to a man now, and they have 2 kids. But she wants to be very clear that yes. Well, she's married to her husband. They're together forever. But
one follow-up, and we won't belabor this point, but what's the difference between that and bisexual?
Well, I am not an expert on this.
I'm clearly not either. I'm genuinely.
But I think that she. I guess nowadays with more people identifying as non-binary, I guess then she would be attracted to non-binary people as well. I don't want to speak for her.
Forgot about
but
that.
I would say like that she's just more open to the person, not fitting into a particular gender.
Seems like that's how it'd be for everybody. Maybe divorce rates would go down.
So why did you want to take a job? In my mind, I don't imagine Alaska as this bastion of liberalism or a community that's particularly open to homosexuals.
Well, so we have
accurate?
Well, we have a governor very similar to Governor Abbott. We have Governor Mike Dunleavy. He was the first governor to endorse.
So did it too. I almost did it too. I was like, what happened to him? What was his accident?
And
cut that trash. Cut that.
It wasn't me. You know how hard it was for
Kyle goes. I
was twitching.
Mike Dunleavy.
Yeah.
So very far right governor. But Anchorage has almost half the population of the state, and we're a fairly blue city. So our
Mayor,
city council mayor currently now are progressive.
just like Houston.
Very similar.
They're
Now,
always surrounded by red.
and then we only have one member in the House of Representatives, and that is Mary Patola, a Democrat who defeated Sarah Palin in 2022. So
She's a Republican, though, right? But not.
Mary Patola is a Democrat, the first Democrat to serve in Alaska in 49 years.
Okay.
Wow.
And in that office,
Which office was it?
The House.
House of Representatives.
Oh, gotcha.
U.S. House. Congress.
Yeah.
And then our two senators, we have Senator Dan Sullivan, who's far-right Trumpy, but then we have Lisa Murkowski, who's probably...
Nobody knows where Lisa is at this point.
She's the most moderate. I would say she's the most moderate Republican in the Senate right now.
She's the most moderate congressperson.
Right.
In either house.
Yeah, she also, I'd say in some ways is the most powerful because she is the swing vote, especially when you're like in a 50-50 Senate.
Oh, I remember when the McCain healthcare, when John stepped up and did the repeal of Obamacare, everybody was really jockeying for her vote on it. And so that's the only reason otherwise I don't know if I would know Murkowski
so
well.
The point of all that is that we're pretty purple.
So why did you want to run?
I ran, again, very specific reasons. I had gotten involved in local Anchorage politics because of a far-right mayor that we had at the time who was going to build a 1,000-person homeless shelter 2 blocks from the home that we just purchased. So that will get local people involved.
Yeah.
But and just for the record, that's just not a good way to manage homelessness. You don't it was going to be a tent, actually. You don't take all of them in the city and put them in one tent.
Especially that far north.
Well, that's neither here nor there. They insisted that it was weather appropriate, but you just don't want it. That's just not the correct way to do it.
That's like Sheriff Joe.
So
It's a big tent.
Maricopa, baby.
So I started an organization that was basically like a grassroots organization of people that were pushing back against him in general. And then I started my own podcast where I was doing basically local politicians, learning about like how to have more influence in local politics. What that accidentally made me do is meet every single politician in local politics. So when the redistricting happened and I ended up in an open seat, people knew who I was. So I was asked. I was asked basically 10 days before the filing deadline. It was not my plan. I didn't know anything about state politics, really. I had not followed Juneau. I was involved in it. I went to every city council meeting. We call it the assembly. I went to every assembly meeting there. And that was the absolute sole amount of my involvement.
Where's your husband from?
He's from Pennsylvania originally, but he'd been in California for 25 years when we met.
How far in Pennsylvania?
He's from the Poconos.
Okay. How was it having the conversation with him? Like, oh, by the way, running for politics all of a sudden.
That's a good question because this year in particular, with the death threats and the stuff that you get.
You got that's the thing even up there.
Yeah. Wow. I just read Mitt Romney's book by McKay Coppins. It's a really good book. Really good. And in that book, he talks about when he was going to vote to impeach Trump the first time, and he was the only Republican who did it, that he knew there would be death threats on him. He knew he'd be cast out of his party. He knew that there would be enormous consequences. But what really gave him pause was when he realized it was going to happen to his wife and children.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't until this year that I realized that there were things that I could do that basically there were people on Twitter who were basically asking for pictures of my child. They were like, find every picture, scurry, we want every picture of him. And that wasn't a day when there was like thousands. I mean, I was tagged thousands of times in these like disgusting posts. And I was fine with it when it was only about me. But that moment, I was like, I have to change the way I do everything.
Yeah. And so do your kids. I think that is probably the leading driver for why we have the two candidates that we currently have. I don't think any good people. It's hard to find good people that want to get into it.
And you know the funny thing. So to get to but about my husband and my son, they've always believed that I'm doing what needs to be done. My
How old is your son?
11.
Okay.
My my first year, I was in Juneau, and they had come to visit, and my son and I were going for a walk, and he said, Daddy, we call it Jay, my husband is Daddy. I'm Isa, which is the Estonian word for daddy. So he said, Daddy feels like he's a single parent because you're not there anymore, and this is really hard. And I don't know why, but in that moment I was like, well, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to quit? And he was like,
100%.
And no, he was like, well, in very matter of fact, he was like, you can't do that to Alaska. And I do feel that. I feel like we have a divided legislature. We're pretty much half and half Democrat, half Republican, with some independents sprinkled in the middle. And I think that it's very, very important that we have progressives who are willing to run in Alaska in particular and to hold the line. And we have held the line. We have not, Alaska looks nothing like Texas because I believe there are people showing up and holding the line.
What issues are so divisive in Alaska because we know in Texas the divisive issues. I don't really feel like many of them are.
It was like trans girls in sports. That's what destroyed me. Trans girls in sports was and I mean, but I knew that I was on the right side of history. I knew that I was in the right, and even though there were progressives who were like, I think we're just going to sit this one out and just kind of let this one pass through. And I was absolutely not going to do that. There's a swimmer named Riley Gaines. She testified in judiciary, which is a committee I serve on. I had asked the question of what studies they had that showed that like an 11-year-old trans girl had all of these advantages. And so they, of course, clipped it in a way that it said that I didn't understand the difference between a man and a woman, and basically made me look like an idiot. She has 1 million followers, and that's when it all poured, like all hell rained down on me. Although I got to say, if I didn't turn on Twitter, nothing was raining down on me.
Yeah.
If I didn't look at social media.
I assume you do still?
It's a tricky thing as a politician. You have to, I think it's not true. You don't have to. There are some politicians who are like, I don't do social media, and they don't do social media, and they're fine. I have a social media presence, and I keep it.
So John Cornyn has Twitter and all this stuff.
The whip?
But the stuff that he posts is so like nonsensically attached to anything going on in reality that I'm like, he has social media, but I'm sure there's some like 19-year-old intern who's like, enjoy Flag Day. Like, it is the most milquetoast, unengaged thing in the world. I'm kind of entertained by it.
I bet John Cornyn appreciates that intern running his social media versus the one that used to run Ted Cruz's.
Oh, the intern that was looking at porn on Ted Cruz's phone?
It happened to that, porn may or not have resembled some of his life.
It's so hard to find good help these days in that regard.
Hey, did y'all follow that story with Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, when his son was his what was that called? Like his promise keeper or whatever, like where his son would get an alert if his dad looked at a naughty website.
Oh yeah, they have almost like an app.
How else are you going to know when it's time to masturbate together?
I believe that's the text you sent to me after sending the article to me.
Yeah,
it was something along those lines. Like, you can't masturbate unless your dad's masturbating at the same time.
If you don't know what time your adult son looks at dirty pictures, how are you even living?
Yeah, that's called being a bad parent.
Well,
if you're not looking together.
So, Andrew, I got to tell you, I follow. I forgot to do this. Give us the name of your podcast.
Okay,
and you wanted to
East Anchorage Book Club, and what I'm going to promote to your listeners is an episode from December 2023. I interviewed former Texas House Representative Glenn Maxey. He was the first person to serve as an openly gay man in the Texas legislature.
And he's still super involved. I know.
Super involved.
He helped us out with...
He's amazing. And the thing is, I interviewed him for 3 hours, and I swear to God, the 3 hours were some of the most amazing footage I've ever recorded. Obviously, I try to make my podcast an hour in length. This one's an hour and 20. It's very Texas specific. My audience is very Alaska specific. I would love it if somebody listened to it. Glenn Maxey's amazing. It's a really, really good podcast.
And it's the
December 24th, the East Anchorage Book Club.
Okay.
And our joke was when we made the podcast is that it wasn't a book club and it wasn't in East Anchorage. And we're so funny. But actually, if we could go back in time.
You're like the Ben Folds 5.
Oh,
We made a mistake. We made a little mistake. But the name does not accurately portray who we are.
Our goal was to come up with the dumbest name we possibly could.
Yeah, we wanted something that gave every guest's PR team a lot of hesitation.
Yeah, we don't want guests that want to.
Well, I heard y'all because I listened to Kim Oggs and y'all do a whole little thing on like, let's explain what the dirty verdict is and where that comes from to make you more comfortable.
I mean, we had a member of the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, which is the Supreme Court for criminal matters, and like on the dirty verdict, we should change the name.
No.
How about Kyle and Associates?
Or the dirty verdict.
The dirty verdict?
Yeah, Kyle and Sons, oil and lube.
There you go. I like that better.
So I met Glenn Maxey. He is very, he was helped the upbringing up of Mark Bankston.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's like, he was at I think he came to every day of the Sandy Hook Alex Jones trial. And I got to meet him. So when he said that, I was like, how on earth did I run into somebody that was like, oh yeah, he's on the East Anchorage Book Club.
I mean, it's a good show. It's
you want to go
Deer Park.
Yeah.
So I think it's Baytown, but whatever floats.
We're all breathing the same.
Yeah, that's the same carcinogen triangle. So I think I have like my news set to Andrew Gray, and I occasionally will find YouTube videos of you like on the floor of the legislature, some of which are just painfully funny, not intentional, I don't think, but I get a kick out of them. Give us some
highlights,
great moments of your brief tenure.
Okay, well, and you know what? I want to do a disclaimer. I am the first openly gay man to serve in the Alaska legislature. I'm not the first gay man to serve.
Certainly not.
Open.
Yeah. So we actually had all the way back to the early 70s.
In the same way, Tim Scott is not the first heterosexual senator.
No comment. Yeah. So yeah, I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
I'm not the first.
You're trying to get him canceled.
Okay. So what I learned from Glenn Maxey, actually, he said that when he served in the Texas House, the way he got things passed is he always got his co-sponsors to be the two most right-wing, crazy conservative people to be his co-sponsors. And that people would think like, oh, well, if it's the gay guy and the two fundamentalist Christians, then this must be a good bill, and it would work. So I took that advice to heart. And what happened, it was March, and I walked into my office. I had two staff members.
This year?
This year.
Okay.
And it was Ron DeSantis had just passed the ban on social media for minors in Florida. And it was just instantaneous. I spun around, and I was like, we need that bill. We're sending it to Legal. We want it drafted as an amendment. And I was like, and what bill are we going to do? And we have a far-right fundamentalist Christian woman, chair of the judiciary, who was running a social porn thing. She was running
age verification.
Age verification. And I was like, we are going to amend her bill. For the record, she's passed 6 bills. I've amended 5 of them. I make sure that the farthest right fundamentalist Christian in the House always has the gay man's amendment on it. I will tell you, it drives her insane.
Well, because if you say we're banning social media for minors and she's trying to get an age,
stood up.
It's never going to pass.
She was like, he's lying, because he said that he copied this bill verbatim, and I looked at the bill and it's 20 pages long and his amendment is 3 long. And I was like, you know what, everybody, she's right. We really just boiled this amendment down to its core. But this is Ron DeSantis' bill. This is what's good for Florida. I want to protect our children. If this porn bill is supposed to protect our children, what we really need to be doing, social media. Twitter is 99% porn.
China and TikTok.
Get it off.
Yeah.
And at 33, we were 40 people in the House, 33 voted for it, which means a lot of conservative Republicans were like, I'm voting with Ron DeSantis. Sorry, Sarah.
Everybody can.
She loses her mind.
So did the bill couldn't pass then?
Well, no. So she has canceled bills before that I've amended, but in this case, she came around and we did the 3rd hearing of the bill, and we moved it to the Senate. The problem is that it is still her bill. She has no friends in the Senate, so none of her bills are heard in the Senate.
Poor lady.
Well, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, how do people not? She's been around a while. How do people not know that you've got to make friends with senators if you want your bills to pass?
Because they got to. We're step one in the House.
Yeah, but and I guess in that regard, it's performance. She's able to do her performance.
She keeps getting elected.
She keeps getting elected.
So
she keeps getting elected,
works.
and she is literally like.
Yeah, she's
Opening of judiciary. My first year, I've just been elected. I'm on judiciary committee. First openly gay man sitting there. And she says, welcome to the judiciary committee. To get started, I would like to read from the most important book of laws, Leviticus. And I'm sitting this far from her. And I'm like, yeah. Did you? She read verses from Leviticus that were in the same chapter that called for murdering homosexuals.
That bitch better not be wearing tweed and silk blends or eat pork or shrimp. That harlot. That's also, did you have any book? Did you say, I would like to now open to the book that I find the most important, Calvin and Hobbes?
No, I would say these are the 48 laws of power, and then just made everybody a narcissist.
I did not expect to go here, but I will.
Yeah.
So what I did, was amend every one of her bills. And then
Just troll her.
when we were doing the
He's not just gay, he's also vindictive.
Yes.
he's angry.
Holds a
We
grudge.
we're doing the trans bills, and we did a triumvirate of trans bills.
Sure.
And we were hearing all of them simultaneously 2 weeks before the end of session when we have no time, and they're like rushing them through. Well, we had one that was about permission slips for pronouns in schools, if you're familiar with that one. We had the commissioner of education. I was not allowed to ask a single question. I was sitting there and I was like, that's all the time we have for today. And I was like, oh, you didn't. I did 9 podcast episodes in 9 days. I interviewed every parent that had called in of a trans child. I interviewed the trans children themselves, and I interviewed their doctors. And I released them all as an episode every single day in a row. I spoke about it on the floor, and I was like going to tank that bill. I was going to tank that bill. It was nothing, no stops pulled. And you know what? If she'd let me ask a question, maybe I wouldn't have had to do that.
So when you impersonate her, you have a very Phyllis Diller kind of attack.
I was going to say Harry Carey.
No, I'm not doing a very good job. I'm not doing a very good job. No, it'd be like,
If she
they do like, Representative Gray. I would never. Everyone has the right to speak.
Oh, she's just clenching pearls.
Everyone has the right to speak here. We're all here to listen.
Because we're Americans, and this is America. There's a great episode of The West Wing on a person that decides to choose specific passages from that testament. And President Bardwell does a great job of addressing someone. He's like, my daughter, she's 13 years old. What's a fair price that I could fetch for her in market? He's like, my cousin, he sleeps in a separate bed than his wife. Should we use big or small rocks to stone him to death? I mean, he just goes off on it and uses a lot of that.
So you also have been recently featured in the Epoch Times.
Oh, yes.
Which is a wonderfully bizarre paper that I think is published by Chinese nationalists.
Yes, so it is
also a religious cult.
It is a very small sect of a Chinese far right movement. It is religion is based in that. I wouldn't call it a cult because I'm not going to use titles, but definitely some hilarious articles and very one-sided.
I have a friend who's a pharmacist who's also an anti-vaxxer, and his wife, who is
sounds pleasant,
interesting, used to send me a lot of articles from the Epoch Times.
Well,
but you're a darling of theirs.
So I am, and it's very topical.
And it's not for your acrobatics.
It was for the DeSantis bill. And interestingly, I knew they were going to be featuring that particular representative, Sarah Vance. Say her name.
Sarah.
Is she related to the J.D. Vance?
I don't believe so, but she is part of the Texas Congress.
You mean
she's from Amarillo?
Potentially Vice President J.D. Vance.
I mean, Vance eating in refrigeration, right?
It's great that he has to eat all the things he said about Donald Trump.
He's the American Hitler.
Hey, but you know what? He's married to a woman named Usha, and we had a woman named Usha at Friendswood and Friendswood, who graduated with me.
Usha.
Usha Amte.
Yes, I know.
Udaya would have been in your
Her
class.
younger sister, Udaya Amte,
Right.
once threw a raging party at Rancho Viejo, for which I had told my parents I think I was staying with you, and I dislocated my shoulder. Actually, maybe that was you in LA.
But anyway, did y'all read the profile on Usha Vance?
No.
Because she's a lawyer for a progressive firm. She's Indian, from India. They get a Hindu blessing at their wedding. It's super progressive. So I'm just thinking like that's his wife. And I was trying to figure out like what the strategy was, because there's a lot of people like saying like that
Ted Cruz's wife isn't even that ugly.
Yeah, well, I think Donald just wanted another candidate with a foreign-born wife.
Right, maybe. But I also think that it might specifically make things complicated with Kamala Harris.
I assume that was a conversation they had on purpose, and it was to churn up, because there is a conservative Indian culture.
Oh, yeah.
Same as Hispanic culture.
I feel like, Kamala Harris, mother being Indian, I feel like she kind of had that community locked down. Not that it's that, well, I don't know. I guess we're talking like very small number of votes that probably matters.
I don't know if it's that small anymore.
But
That's all a four-bit county.
large enough that it would impact a swing state? Right? Like there's a very large Indian population in parts of Houston.
But you're talking Indian, but
Texas is going...
But if you check that box of Indian, outside of somebody who's still holding that grudge from the partition with Pakistan, you're talking all of South Asia.
I mean, it's
Not just India.
It's just us and the Mountbattens left that are pissed about it.
And so, yeah, I think that might have been some strategy involved. I was surprised at the pick, to say the least.
So I'm pivoting myself. I am going to the convention.
Yes.
So this is a very good...
Do you get plus ones?
I do not. In fact, you can bring family, but they can't go to the floor. And when we were initially doing this whole thing, we thought no one was going to go to this convention, that no one would want to go. In fact, I just returned from Council of State Governments, Western states. So I was just in Portland, Oregon with a lot of other state legislators. And I was asking my friends, I was like, hey, are y'all going to the convention in Chicago? And they're like, no, we thought it was going to be boring. I mean, we could have gone, and we said no, and now it's too late. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to be there. Was it so annoyed that they're not?
Was it like the 1960 convention in Chicago?
I did 68.
1968.
Hubert Humphrey.
I mean, that was a huge one.
Right. Like, there was major Vietnam War protesters. I just read Norman Mailer's book about it. It's called Miami and the Siege of Chicago.
So you got that one was pretty eventful. Like 1860, Abraham Lincoln, when nobody knew who was going to be president. This is going to be an exciting one.
Right. Like that. And also 1972, I'll just say 1972 was a convention in New York City. That's when McGovern became the Democratic nominee. Very controversial.
Wasn't that the first time a delegate did not vote for the... I'm trying to think.
Maybe, but you know what I'm doing? I'm bouncing back because Glenn Maxey was the delegate from Texas at that convention. And he was like 21 years old, and he made it on the cover of the New York Times.
That was for...
And it's all in the podcast.
So I want to ask some questions about the convention.
Yes.
Do you think are there going to be like massive riots, mayhem in the streets, like some people are predicting?
Yes.
Well, I think there'll be riots. I think they were expecting that all along. That the Gaza-Israel stuff will probably there'll be. I don't think it'll be on the same level as the 1968 Vietnam riots, but I think that there'll definitely be protesters there.
I mean, considering the events that happened last week, I think it might be a little bit more intense than we expected.
Right. Well, what my understanding, and this is true for even 1968.
Pull out the old Kosovo flakjack.
1968, the convention that was happening inside was completely insulated from the war in the streets happening outside.
Yeah.
And so the expectation is that would be similar this year. That there may be craziness happening all around us, but inside the convention itself, it should be well-controlled environment. I mean, for what it is.
I mean, should be. If January 6th taught us one thing, it's that crowds of lunatics are easy to control and easy to keep them out of doors.
Right.
So you think you're not anticipating like absolute insanity like we are?
I'm anticipating more insanity than what we thought a couple months ago.
Do you think there's a chance that the party somehow switches delegates at last minute?
I don't know if you can say that.
I do think there's a chance. Everyone knows there's a chance. Read the newspapers now.
Who would it be? I only read in the Epoch Times.
Yeah, Kyle,
So I am an outlier. There's a lot that I'm not allowed to say, but I've already been quoted in the media.
Yes.
I do believe that anyone with a grandparent can see when someone's gotten older and needs help. And I'm not sure that someone who needs help is the best choice for the most difficult job in the world.
I'm thinking
We'll support whoever the Democratic nominee is, no matter what. But what I'm saying is that I think, when I listen to Pods Save America, and I'm not a usual listener, but I did listen to their episode last week where they said that they had talked to everybody from the Obama team through the Biden team. They're like black, white, man, woman, gay, straight. No one wants Biden to stay in.
no one. I thought that they asked for the debate early to expose it so that we would have a little bit of time. And then now that he's doubled down, everybody's just kind of handcuffed.
Let me ask you, let me back up from a purely strategic position. Do you think, taking into account all the other indicators of a healthy government and a healthy economy are trending in Joe Biden's way? Mm-hmm. And by the way, the idea of a debate between Trump and anyone changing someone's mind at this point is silly. Why didn't Joe just say, not going to do it? Because there's, in Texas,
Joe asked for it.
no, I know. And that's my question is, why didn't Joe just say no? Because that has happened in the majority of Texas gubernatorial races in my lifetime. The Republican says, well, I'm ahead by 19 points. Why am I going to give this guy a platform?
Right.
Why didn't Joe just say, nah, I'm not going to do it?
Well, he wasn't ahead.
And I think because Donald had already come out and said he's not wasting his time with him, and so Joe challenged him. I thought it was a strategic point by the team to expose it, but I think Joe didn't.
So I think that's a little conspiracy theory-esque.
For sure.
I think that I think probably some people thought he was going to hit it out of the park and we can move on from this debate. That's what I think people hoped. I think most people who've been watching for the past 2 years
Had some sense that maybe that wasn't going to happen.
completely shocked by what happened.
Well, they put up Joe Biden versus Paul Ryan, and then they put up Joe versus Donald, and it is two completely different humans.
Sure.
I mean, but who steps in? We would know.
Well, it'll be Kamala Harris, which I would admit, what I would say, and because it's got to be somebody super famous. We've got like 4 months. It's got to be somebody super famous that has name recognition.
So with Michelle.
Before you do that,
It would be awesome. But she's not, as far as I know, campaigning for it.
so let me ask this theoretical question, which is what you point out. 4 months from convention to general election. What are the chances that a Democratic candidate, whoever it is, could go in and be successful? Because like you point out, there's only like 3 people that could do it. Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris, Oprah Winfrey.
She gets them so.
Oprah is in the Mitt Romney book proposing that Romney run as an independent with Oprah as the VP.
That would have been awesome.
I mean, if we've never had a president who is the only person to ever make money hosting an Olympics, so there's that. Mitt Romney really hangs his hat on that.
He does. Yeah, and that's a big part of the book.
Really?
Yeah.
I knew that already.
When you don't sell alcohol at the venues, you save a lot of money in jail time.
Well, you have to spend that money to buy a Bible and a Book of Mormon to put it in the shelf at every Marriott.
Well,
In the drawer.
I was going to say some very offensive things about Mormons. But
So, and this comes back to my brother. So David and I send memes back and forth all the time.
okay.
Careful with that.
Which I'll just say, which gives me insight into what I think of as a Republican Texan who doesn't want to vote for Trump.
Yes.
I would say Republican Texans who don't want to vote for Trump do not want to vote for Kamala Harris.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, because
So for a
incredibly large number of memes about her
Yeah.
that are coming from Republican Texas to me.
She's just not good at telling jokes.
I don't know if they
really bad.
They would say that's the only thing they don't like about her, but it's one of them. I can think of 2 others. Regardless, for sake of background, your brother is politically not. He's a little bit dissimilar from you.
Hey, I got one of those.
Oh, yeah, my whole family. I mean, my mother is excited to vote for Trump the 3rd time.
Okay.
And she was just up in Alaska.
By the way, sweet Judy, Grandma Judy, this is your 80th birthday.
Birthday,
Judy.
Happy birthday, Mom. I hope she's not listening to this.
My surrogate mother. I'm going to make her listen to this. One of the most wonderful women in the world.
We're going to have a watch party.
So, back to where we were. Right? Who do you think could do it, if anyone?
Well, I mean, and this is going to sound like it's like the gay guy supporting the gay guy, but I would love for Pete Buttigieg to do it because I believe he could do it because he's a very good speaker.
He's fantastic.
I think I have my reservations with Pete based on how he botched the Palestine Ohio train debacle, and the door was open for him to actually be a powerhouse in that position, and he sided with the train rail yards and all that, and I that really rubbed me the wrong way and just showed me he wasn't ready for the big stage. In my opinion,
that was during session, and so I wasn't engaged.
So you're from California. Gavin Newsom did a bunch of...
Lived in California a few times, but I'm from Friendswood.
Pardon me. Excuse me. That was a slip. Having been a domiciliary at times of California.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you have any familiarity with Gavin Newsom, but he did some media blitz stuff,
on
12 months, 18 months ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was really good. I mean, I didn't watch it, but I will say that I talked to my California friends who are not super progressive. They're more moderate. And they like Gavin Newsom, and they think that he's uniquely qualified because California is the 5th largest economy in the world. And it's done, in their mind, he's done okay. He showed that he could do that.
I watched. I can't remember if it wasn't with Tucker. It might have been with Bill O'Reilly. But Gavin did an interview, and it was very much like a debate style. Mm-hmm. And he was more prepared.
He's locked and loaded,
and he really did have some answers that I was like, I don't know if that's true, but if it is, it's a very interesting take that I did not know. Because from Texas, all we get is how everybody from California is moving here. The taxes are unbearable, and that they still are a country of the 5th largest economy, but they take money from the federal government more than they give, and that's kind of what we get here.
So you think Gavin? I guess let me put it this way: I, in my career as a lawyer, have gone to the primaries and primary fundraisers for both parties in Harris County.
Ew.
And one of the things that has stuck out to me, and I think both parties would agree with this with pride, is that the GOP is very organized. There are designated kingmakers, mm-hmm. but they also tend to be very authoritarian. Mm-hmm. But they keep their folks in line, their thoughts are pretty stale, and that's easier to do. The Dems have a real bare knuckle, like who knows what's going to happen, but is largely disorganized, and everyone is happy to ignore a kingmaker.
Well, I think you got two separate sects of the Dems.
Sure.
Which is, you got the new school, which is extremely progressive, and you have the old school that say, no, if we stay in the center, we can win, we can keep winning. And it's like, if that was true, then you never would fucking
And I'm talking about very broad generalizations.
Sure.
And so my question is, like, there's clearly one kingmaker in the Republican Party and has been for 6 or 8 years.
Karl Rove?
And then, no, Jeb.
Jeb. Such a mess, Jeb.
But how is this going to play out? You guys are going to get to the convention, it's going to be like, I don't know. Let's see what happens. I mean, any ideas on what those levers are going to look like?
So I have a meeting tonight.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, there's a Zoom call tonight.
Can you get the password? I won't say anything.
How many
delegates are there?
I think just under 4,000, but there's only about 20 from Alaska.
Okay. Go ahead.
So we have had some interaction, and there have been calls. And the thing is, it's really hard to know who is calling me. They'll say they're from the DNC, but are they from the DNC or are they from the Biden people? So there are calls that happen where they kind of ask where I am. I will say that I talked to a few of my other delegates from Alaska, and I get that they're getting different conversations than I'm getting. And I don't know if it's because maybe they already know that I'm a wild card and they're not going to ask, am I 100% behind Biden?
Well, any question they ask you is giving you intel.
Correct.
Yeah.
So they haven't really asked me anything. They just call and tell me, they say, the rumors are true. There is going to be a roll call vote. You will be getting more information. Okay. And I hang up.
Okay. So all of these different state delegates, you don't have, do you guys have to vote for who won the primary?
No, it's happened once before.
So in Alaska, when we had our I guess it was like our district convention or something, but it was all Zoom. And honestly, I'm the representative of House District 20. The only person at my district, this particular Democratic district meeting, was the director of House District 20. So it was two of us. And, and he followed the book. He was like, I'm going to ask that you be kind and respectful and listen. I was like, I agree. He read the script exactly. But in that meeting, we had to say, and at that point, Dean Phillips had withdrawn his name. So the only name on the ballot was Joe Biden. And he had to ask, who do I support of this list? And I said, Joe Biden. And then he said that from that list of one name, he would also choose Joe Biden. And so it's agreement that House District 20 supports Joe Biden. And I said, yes, we support that we've chosen that one name from that list.
Are you handcuffed to that?
No.
Okay, that's what I thought.
It says that we're supposed to vote for the nominee in good conscience, putting a lot of emphasis on in good conscience.
Right.
And I feel like things have changed from that moment in April till now. So I feel like that there is some wiggle room there. I don't know how every other state does, but Joe Biden himself in the press conference last week said, I want delegates to vote their conscience. And then he did the famous, it's not going to happen. Where he whispered his thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if it's not going to happen.
You should think about that harder, Joe.
That's interesting. Can you zoom in periodically from the convention, be our live on the floor correspondent?
So I don't know if I'm allowed to I'm sure I'm not allowed to say what I was about to say, so I'm not going to say it. But what I'll say is I have, I'll be definitely keeping copious notes.
Please, you will share, but only in good conscience.
Yes, I mean, because you are getting, and it's important to talk about who the delegates are. And I think I told you earlier that all of my friends who are these big go-getters in Oregon, California, Nevada, chose not to go to the convention because they thought it was going to be super boring when those decisions were being made in April. And so who did decide to go? Well, it was retired school teacher, age 78, just loves watching MSNBC every night.
Yeah.
She's going.
The Mayo girl, she's so great.
And, And so we've got a bunch of folks who this is their first rodeo. They're longtime fans. So a much older generation. This is not what they were prepared for. They are eyes wide.
I think the Democratic Party's in trouble. I genuinely believe that.
I think America's in trouble.
Kyle, do you think you could, in good conscience, vote for Joe Biden to lead the free world?
I would say that on balance, if I had to choose between Donald Trump and
RFK or Joe Biden,
semi-literate turnip, I would choose this. I would always choose the benevolent nincompoop over the malevolent genius. Not that Donald Trump's a genius, but I have a fairly good idea after seeing what this state has gone through in the last 4 or 5 years of what Trump will do to immigrants, to the Justice Department, to women. And I think even a partially senile Biden is a better choice than that.
You heard it first from the Texas turnip, Kyle Herbert.
That's right.
I agree.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree that we don't have an option.
I agree. Well, no, we're not talking about RFK yet.
Well, he got them brainworms, baby.
I just want to know where his voice went.
He's the worst. RFK is the worst.
I don't get it.
Joe Rogan loves him.
Well, Joe Rogan had a lot of head trauma.
The farthest right legislators in the Alaska House love him too.
The far right?
The far right loves RFK.
I know people on the left side that like him as well.
Everybody
and have liked him before.
Oh my God! I don't know anybody who likes him other than the extreme far right.
I'm not sure what there is to like. He's kind of
he's the one that he called out. He's the one that got Tony Fauci in the crosshairs.
Yeah.
Read his book.
Nah.
I'm not either.
That's the kind of book that makes me regretful that someone taught me how to read it.
Yeah, but at the same time, the one, and I think I said this on a podcast before, but he wrote a bunch of crazy shit in there about Fauci and the vaccine and all that, and he hadn't been sued yet. And that's what brings me a little bit of
Who's going to sue him?
Tony Fauci.
You think Fauci dedicated his entire life to bettering the human race through medicine and epidemiology so he could sue some buffoon like RFK?
So he could go get some Kennedy trust fund money.
I think that absolutely would sully his reputation. I don't think he cares. RFK is a bizarre and trivial footnote, and Fauci, I think, is a real live American hero.
I do too.
So I don't think he would sue him.
Shout out to Big Tone.
All right.
Y'all talking about suing? I just wanted to say, like, I crammed your podcast over the last 24 hours. I'm not a lawyer. Didn't know anything about lawyers, really. I mean, so I've learned so much about personal injury law and suing. What's a lot of money and what's not a lot of money.
Oh, you know what a lot of money is?
3 commas.
More.
Yeah.
A lot of money is more money.
A little bit more than that.
And kudos, because I did listen to your very first episode, and you guys have come a long way.
We started out like RFK could have been a guest.
In the garage.
Now we've come along.
Well, I listened to your Kim Ogg episode, and that was because I recognized the name, and I noticed that you'd done her opponent the week before. What's his name?
Sean Tier,
who's going to win.
I did.
He won.
Yeah.
Oh.
He beat her by 50 points.
Well, yeah, in the primary, but the election's in November.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
But he'll win.
No Republican has won a county race in, 15 years? 16 years?
Interesting. Well, yeah. So anyway, it was, but that's the time y'all sort of like ventured into politics and like had both sides, like both candidates on.
You know, I would say this. We made an observation fairly early on of 2 things. One is the political views of the folks that host this are not monolithic. We disagree about a fair amount.
Oh, absolutely.
And 2, a podcast can take on a life of its own. And once you start doing political stuff, your audience is cut in half, and then it has to be one or the other.
Right.
And that's not really our jam.
Well,
yeah, let's hear both sides and talk about it.
And for me, I get requests all the time from candidates or their campaign manager or whatever saying, hey, I really think she'd be great on your podcast. And I always respond. I was like, but then I have to have all of her opponents, and that's an episode a week, and you've taken up a whole month of my time for a race that's not East Anchorage. Why would I do that?
How many years is a term for you?
2 years.
2?
Yeah.
So you're constantly campaigning.
Yeah, I had. So we have ranked choice voting in Alaska, and we have open primaries. So we basically. So in other words, if that DA race were in Alaska,
runoff.
Then no, we don't.
Oh no, yeah.
Instant runoffs, which is the ranking, but they would both be on the ballot, no matter what. There are 4 candidates on the ballot, no matter what.
Okay, I don't hate that.
I think the most powerful part is the open primaries because it's taken the parties out of control. I'm not sure, and obviously if you've got non-crazy people running that don't have any, a lot of times that's fine because it is very annoying when the party's like, we're going to go with the old white man because it's his turn.
You had a couple centuries of turn.
Right, exactly. So that's fun that you can get yourself on the ballot. But at the same time, there's, for example, we have a Senate race happening in Anchorage where there's a really bad Democratic candidate. She is not good. She is not going to win. And we can't stop her.
Yeah.
And lots of low information folks will give her a lot of money. And that's money that could have been spent on important, flippable seats where it would have made a difference, but instead they gave it to a certain loser who is eating up all the oxygen in the room.
Well, let me say this. When it comes to politics and this podcast, we're glad to have had you on. And Sarah Vance, is that her?
Yeah, do you want to invite her on?
Yeah, for sure. I would always welcome. I would love that because I'll go back to that West Wing episode.
She's in Texas.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's a Texas connection.
Sorry for that.
Representative Vance. In all honesty, we'd love to have you. We'll Zoom you in. Heck,
no, we'll come to you.
I was going to say,
because then we can go. Then after we record that, we can go on to the East Anchorage Book Club.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, we got an Alaskan trip.
Let's do it.
I'm in.
Yeah,
I've never been.
All right, Sarah Vance. Don't worry, we're coming to you.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
We're about out of time. Any final thoughts or folks back in Alaska you want to say hello to?
Well, I want to thank you both for having me on the show. It was super fun.
Anytime.
And you know what? Honestly, just me cramming your episodes taught me so much. And that's the fun thing. So your last week's episode, Murray.
It's great.
You had a lot of talks about would you want your kids to do this job, and basically y'all said no.
I said
your son's like 3 weeks old.
That's right.
Yeah, I was the one that was very much like, I really hope he doesn't. I hope he's a singer-songwriter that makes zero money and asks dad for rent every month.
Just happy.
Yeah.
Well, y'all make it seem like a really fun job. So, and it's a fun listen. Like, y'all have really progressed to something. I made this joke before we started today with Kyle. I would love for my son to be a politician. It's the best job ever. So people out there, we talked about like a bunch of horrible stuff happening earlier. I think everyone should run for office. If you are upset about what you see around you, run for office.
It's easier to say. So I'm 36 in my generation. So I went in 2005, I started college, and we were like the 7th school ever to have Facebook. And that wasn't a thing before. So nobody told us at 18, there's this new thing and be careful what you put on there. So I think there's going to be a big gap of people that can't run.
Trump blew that open. Who cares?
There's a lot of us that can't pull that off. I don't look good in orange. I don't.
Not only that, but let me say this. I have known Representative Gray since I was like 10 and he was like 11 or 12. And so if anybody's looking for dirt, Sarah Vance.
Yeah, let's say, come on the show.
Not only do I have pictures, I have a very vivid memory. And if you think Facebook is the worst thing, just imagine what my mind could concoct, Sarah
Yeah,
Vance.
but the difference is, to your point, the difference is that I get to say like, oh, he's lying. Facebook, it's your post, it's your picture.
It's on somebody else threw a phone up and recorded something.
I agree with Kyle. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I mean,
It doesn't to the voters. It does to your kids. Because they see what dad was like, and dad's not like that anymore. And that's a tough.
You never know what Jack's going to be like.
I know.
He might be totally metal.
But if I run for office now, I know what he's like now.
He might be totally metal and think you're,
Dad's not even edgy.
yeah, just go out there.
Yeah,
Get a giant tattoo of Alaska or Deer Park.
Dad's not Bernie. He's Tim Kaine.
well, and I would say the same. Anyone wants some dirt on Kyle, I've got it.
We all have it.
Oh, yeah.
He gets dirt daily.
And it's true. Kyle's not exactly a closed book, but I got some good stuff.
Let's do it.
David's, Andy's...
I smell a book.
Andy's younger brother, who's been my best friend since I was in the 4th grade, will on occasion, get a little mouthy and start saying things about our childhood that are maybe less than flattering. And I'll say something like, nuclear weapons. Like we all have nuclear weapons.
If you use them, I use them. Nobody wins.
Start talking, you can't shut me up.
Mutual destruction.
And usually David, who's not exactly a circumspect individual, I'll look at him and I'll say, I have nuclear weapons, and he'll go, oh yeah, you're right. I shouldn't tell that story.
My bad.
And then he'll just be totally silent.
Yeah, but and the Trump thing though, and I mean, I don't want to say there's any silver lining. I mean, it's a disaster, but it's almost made it a perk to having something scandalous and owning it.
You're real.
Yeah, and
Everybody hates to sin, but they love the sinner.
Yeah, like
True. Bless his heart, he did try to overthrow the government, and he had sex with all those whores.
porn stars.
He said he was
Real sex workers.
said he was sorry. What am I going to do? Not forgive him?
I've been to the Mont Bleu in Lake Tahoe, and I was up a lot on the craps table, and I was bribing that pit boss. I was like, just give me 5 minutes to take selfies in that room. Because it was like right when it came out. Oh, no. And there was a hard policy of no, unless you're paying $6,000 a night for that room.
They'll let you know what room it is.
Yeah, there's only 2 suites.
Hey, well, thanks again for coming on. East Anchorage Book Club is my podcast.
We're there.
Well, wherever you listen to podcasts.
We'll do it summer months.
Yeah, when y'all come up.
It'll be summer or early fall.
All right. Open invitation. Alaska is, straight up, I said this as I was coming in, I got a little plug for Alaska.
Yeah.
Walking from my car to this building, no regrets at all that I will be dying in Alaska.
Let's have that conversation.
Is my home.
Let's have that conversation again in January.
January is amazing.
Representative Gray.
Winter sports. From 12 months out of the year, Alaska, best state in the union.
Kyle doesn't have a great record with winter sports.
Did break a leg once, but he has medical training. Representative Gray, fantastic to have you on. Thank you so much. We will see you in Alaska soon. Good luck at the convention, and best of luck to you. All right, very good.